You clicked on this video because you're an artist or an art-curious person. Hello! Welcome! I'm Mel, an artist, a writer, a musician, and an educator that has been at this thing called being an artist for the last decade and a half. The intention of this video is to help you unhook from the pull of the infinite scroll and to make something. But in order to do that, I am going to tell you about all of the things that I previously got wrong about creativity and making art. Because I paint and write for money, it's easy to try and apply typical business and productivity advice to the act of making itself. Which brings me to my first point. Creativity is not efficient. Now, while I talk today, I'm going to cut between me in my little studio here and me actually doing art sitting in one of my favorite redwood trails in Oakland, California. The art we make should avoid being put through the corporate squeeze of efficiency until we feel a sense of completion with it. Like when it's fully formed and it's not baby. That completion comes after we make oodles and volumes and piles of weird stuff. The uncomfortable truth is that art is just wildly inefficient. Art is not a get-rich-quick scheme, and if you think it is, go watch something else. Real art is about finding the ways your play and research intrigues the people that you're longing to speak to. Real art is about connecting to them on a deeper level than with language, which in my case, I've discovered is people who need to be reminded to go outside, because being inside makes them feel ill, and being in nature makes them feel better. So I make art that works as a reminder. A little thing that can hang on your wall and point to you and say, hey, you, go smell some dirt and touch some trees. And listen to the ocean. You're going to feel way less anxious if you do that. Now, creative advice that tends to embrace efficiency or productivity doesn't hold space for differences in working class artists' responsibilities, time, obligations, or general abilities. Instead, it often sounds like, write 3 pages every morning in an A5 journal. I see you the artist's way. Draw every day. It's the only way to get good. If you want to be a real artist, you need to be filling sketchbooks constantly. Post your work on social media on a consistent clip. Every day, you must appease the algorithm. Wake up very early and do a specific practice the same time, the same way each day. Yet, I'm an artist, and I've been an artist for 15 years, and yet I've tried all of these things and failed. I fell into the traps of following productivity advice here on YouTube or through self-help books. That just didn't work. But then it dawned on me that a lot of this advice was coming from men or women in positions of power over in our culture. It was often coming from rich people, folks married to celebrities, people whose lives I couldn't fathom having similarities to. And we can't take creative advice as gospel from people whose lives look and feel fundamentally different to ours. If you are feeling stuck by a system that isn't working for you or by some advice you got, I want you to look up that person who gave you that advice. What is their life like? Are you being fair to yourself by trying to match their path or pace? Now, sure, another person on the trail might be able to hike a challenging section with confidence, walking straight up a steep slope. And I've got a back injury. So I always have to recognize that my body is not their body. So what is the point in comparison? And we need to apply that to our art. Paintings on my wall sometimes take me months or years to finish. Artists are not productivity bros. Art doesn't grow in some kind of linear line like a stalk. It's wobbly. It's so wobbly. We need to embrace the wobble. You need to ask yourself, who do I long to connect with? And then make a bunch of stuff as if you're talking to them through your stuff. And then invite people to come talk to you about that stuff. And once you have a nice big pile to show off, ask, where do those people like to gather that want to talk about this stuff? Probably it'll be the easiest to find those people in person, and maybe, but unreliably lately, on the internet. Focus on building relationships with people who actually care about your work outside of the art world. Art is so much more than what the art world tells us is acceptable or okay, and we need to give ourselves permission to play and to do weird things. Let me put it a different way. Have you ever been hiking and you notice how certain steep areas of the trail like weave back and forth over gentle slopes in order to climb a hill? That is what's known as a switchback. And the switchback is a type of wobble. If we apply that approach to our art, yes, it would take longer to get to the destination, but it makes the hike more accessible to humans with different abilities. I injured my spine earlier this year, and it wasn't until 2 weeks ago that I was cleared to start hiking again, which was rough. And my physical therapist said, you can hike up a hill, but you always have to take a switchback. And that is the key to the switchback. The switchback is accessibility. It makes things easier for other people to arrive at the destination. That's more compassionate to their bodies and minds. So, I want to ask you, can we build a connection to our creative practice that's inefficient? That's focused on the switchback method and the wobble, without layering on gobs of shame inherited from productivity advice and neurotypical habit systems. I think it's possible for us to approach reconnecting to our art like a switchback. So I want to ask you to just take a moment to think about what your creative practice or life more generally would be like if you approached it as a gentle meander rather than a climb up a steep grade. What would that look like for you? And what changes might you need to make to your mindset, expectations, or approach? The other thing to know about switchbacks on trails is that they keep the trail from eroding and making it hard for other people to return to those areas. So switchbacks actually serve the collective rather than individuals. They allow a larger group of humans to enjoy a place and not push it into collapse or extinction. Plus, if we think about the destination of our art in terms of efficiency, if we're rushing, pushing, falling into hustle culture mentalities, we're going to arrive at the destination being dysregulated and unmoored. I have had several videos on different platforms go viral. One in particular went viral here, and one really went viral on TikTok, and they haven't helped me sell any art. Instead, they've put me in really unhealthy emotional states, responding to comment arguments, creating situations where my message is deeply misunderstood and is reaching the wrong people. Like, I'm not an anti-intellectual. I'm not against college. I just said that art schools got too fucking expensive. I am not interested in having conversations with these, like, let's just doom college completely kind of people, because college shaped who I am. I love the curiosity that I was able to learn and cultivate at art school. I just don't think that it should cost $300,000 for somebody to get a BFA. That's the fundamental problem. And too many people took that as a reason to just like jump on why art schools just shouldn't exist. After all of those mistakes in virality and content strategy, I need to reroute and build a structure for how I get to the destination by asking myself not how quickly I want to get there, but how do I want to feel when I arrive? How do I not erode the trail completely on my way up? The next thing I got wrong about art is that it's going to be imperfect. The imperfections are the places where you will find your unique and beautiful voice. Now, because I went to art school, my perfectionist nature was dialed up to the most extreme version. I wanted to get good grades so I could keep my scholarships, which meant perfectionism and people-pleasing converged into a really rigid way of showing up for my art. I spent years always using a projector. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. Vermeer did it. Or starting with a digital painting first, because supplies are expensive and I love an undo button. And also, I was afraid of making imperfect or weird work. It was definitely my unique flavor of neurodivergence that led to this, but everything that I made had to have a plan. I worked a job throughout all of college, so the time that I spent in my studio had to be used well, making worthwhile pieces to present and defend and critique. Oh no. Yeah, it's the efficiency problem again. Yet, in the imperfections and in the weird spaces, especially when working out in the landscape, like you see here, I'm finding my actual voice as an artist. I burnt out trying to play the art world games and gave up on making work. But when I came back to it as a need for my soul to connect to the beauty of the land around me, my style drastically changed. I started to embrace plein air this past year, and I realized that my natural, imperfect, wobbly art style was coming to life as I was having to make changes and adapt to weird moments on the fly. You're going to drop your brushes in the dirt. You're probably going to get your proportions wrong. You're probably going to play a weird chord every once in a while, but hear me out. Who cares? That actually is what makes it good. In the age of AI, making art is a crucial act of rebellion. To put the magic of doing back in your body. Making art in these weird-ass times is radical and joyful, and it doesn't matter that the hand shapes you draw are wacky or that you put a tree in the wrong place. What matters is that you worked with your materials and made a real-life thing come through your body. Imperfect, human-made things are of the highest value to me right now. Human-made things are gorgeous celebrations of what connects us to this earth and to each other. I hate the barrage of AI slop out there as much as the next person, but to quote this meme, a computer can never be horny or spiteful. Therefore, a computer should never make art. Anything generated by a corporate computer isn't art. It's slop. To end this section about imperfections, I want to read you a story from one of my favorite books, Art and Fear, about a ceramics class. I read this recently to my students in my gouache and watercolor class, and they really resonated with the sentiment. So I think it's a great parable for the perfection problem. The ceramics teacher announced on opening day that he was dividing the class into two groups. Those on the left side of the studio, he said, would be graded solely on the quantity of work they produced. All those on the right solely on its quality. His procedure was simple. On the final day of class, he would bring in his bathroom scales and weigh the work of the quantity group. 50 pounds of pots rated an A, 40 pounds of B, and so on. Those being graded on quality, however, needed to produce only one pot, albeit a perfect one, to get an A. Well, came grading time, and a curious fact emerged. The works of highest quality were all produced by the group being graded for quantity. It seems that while the quantity group was busy churning out piles of work and learning from their mistakes, the quality group had sat theorizing about perfection and in the end had little more to show for their efforts than grandiose theories and a pile of dead clay. If you think good work is somehow synonymous with perfect work, you are headed for big trouble. Art is human. Error is human. Ergo, art is error. Inevitably, your work will be flawed. Why? Because you're a human being. And only human beings, warts and all, make art. Without warts, it's not clear what you would be, but clearly you wouldn't be one of us. You see, those who focused on persistence, the continued desire to make things, and lots of things, despite it all, were actually the ones who made better work. Imagine being graded on weight in school. If persistence is something you want to work on in your creative practice, well, buddy, go join my free Discord server. It's the focus and core topic of our community. We are all AI free, and we've got a great group working to embrace this path of making piles of work together. And disclaimer though, if you want to join the Discord, I am someone who's interested in guiding people back to their creativity as a healing and intuitive practice. My intention as an educator and as a person making weird videos with this channel is to help you make art, to make magic, and to make meaning in your life. I think the real way that we make life better for all artists is through universal basic income. And Ireland is doing a great job of showing exactly what that looks like. We could have it here in the United States if we just taxed billionaires. So let's focus less on competition and fierce individualism and more on collective political action to make real change happen, shall we? The third thing that your art needs is failure. You need to make some ugly stuff. Going back to the idea of the perfection problem with the ceramic students, you need to allow things to get weird and wacky. Grade yourself on weight. I still make things all the time that are strange and maybe not ideal. They're real, tangible things made with my human brain. Made with these hands. I have a tutoring student right now that I've been working with one-on-one for the last few months. He is learning how to draw, and we're working together on faces and anatomy. And the other day he asked, when will I find my style? You know, that elusive thing that so many artists and illustrators want. That thing that makes us all recognize the work as ours at just a quick glance. And I told him that style will start to reveal itself and then likely shift, emerge, and change. But by focusing on skill building, learning, and curiosity, you can point yourself in the direction of style. Style is, in fact, an editing process that you do after you have a lot of work. You can reflect from there, take inventory, and then embrace what you like the most rather than contorting or copying others. And so he got right back to work on sculpting and drawing heads. By the way, if you want to work with me in this capacity, there's a link in the description about how to do that. But this question of style and fear of failure is what I totally got wrong in art school, imprisoned by grades and the need to perform in a classroom full of bullies and egos. My work was tied up in perfection and the need to prove I could do it well. In recovering my practice as an adult, though, and helping others do the same, it's the places where imperfections and weird slipperiness, where things like our unique mark-making emerges. Failure is part of the process. I wish I had been graded on how much I was willing to fail and make bad things, rather than how well I was able to present like a fully formed human with an artist statement. I hated artist statements. I felt like they were the most debilitating part of being an artist, forcing yourself to contort all of your ideas and work to fit a rigid paragraph of flowery language, hinting to fixed research and parameters and interests. This part of arts academia discourages failure. Grading is a discipline that encourages conformity, behaving like a good, productive little worker. It doesn't let you be an artist. It took over a decade of me unlearning to get me to these realizations. So if you also have failure-based fears, I recommend 2 things. The first is to never write an artist statement again. Unless you have to for an application or something. And if you do, I recommend that you speak it before you write it, preferably into like voice memos on your phone, so that it's written in actual intelligible human language and not international art English. And instead of statements, I suggest that you keep a note or a document or a list of things that you're interested in, curious about, and that are driving you to make things. This is your persistence list. It'll keep you from stagnating, from crashing out, and from quitting art completely. Fill this list with quotes from books you're reading, questions that come up in studio visits, or with other artists in discussions, places that you might find inspiration like Discord servers or even your text threads. If you've seen people talking about having a personal curriculum, this list is that, but for your creative work more generally. And I will say, once this list gets really big, you might need some software to host all of these ideas, and Obsidian is a really good app for keeping track of all of that. Next, I recommend getting your hands on some form of this deck of cards. There are free app versions for your phone, but the original copy that I had of these was just a bunch of cut up paper prompts in an envelope. It's called Oblique Strategies, and it's made by painter/musician Brian Eno and his friend/color theorist Peter Schmidt. What I like about it is that it'll give you little challenges to get outside of your usual biases and ways of thinking. Oracle and Terra decks are also great technologies to use for this to get inspired or unstuck that aren't AI. Please, don't use generative AI when you're stuck as an artist. It'll kill your intuition. I've been working to recover my music practice with the folks doing the Hiker's Way, and one of the prompts from this deck was, what wouldn't you do? And it ended up leading to a really fun and strange evening of experimentation and play, building a super fast drum beat and bass line to experiment over. I normally tend to write music in the beach house tempo, so like 82 beats per minute to like 85 beats per minute, and this was like 180. So very different, and honestly likely a failure, but an incredible learning and growth opportunity for me as an artist. Right now, more than ever, we need to be guided by the weird, the wobbly, the intuitive, and the unexplainable. So if you've watched this far, maybe subscribe, but actually, more importantly, find me off of this platform. YouTube is becoming less and less trustworthy, supporting the work of strange fruit like me, and keeps asking me to pay for reach. This sucks. Things like hyping this video helps, but if you connected with this, I would really recommend that you go to the description and you find somewhere else where we can stay connected. My newsletter is the best place to stay in touch with me, and I also run a free Discord server. Those are the places that I prefer. I use Instagram as a portfolio, and TikTok and I are not friends anymore. So if you want to support my work and the things that I do by signing up for my classes, collecting my art, buying me a coffee, there's links in the description, and I recommend that you go look at my website. I've spent a lot of work on it over the last couple of months. So until next time, stay creative and find your own ways to persistently bloom. There are some things on the screen to watch now, and YouTube would love that if you did that. But if you're going to stick around to watch one of the things popping up, please go get something to make while you listen. Take back a little bit more of your creative power. By quitting Instagram, I taught myself to knit, and I made this shirt that I'm wearing. You should also leave Instagram.